Performance car manufacturers love to make faster versions of their fast cars. But for the true drivers or collectors, most manufacturers will have another level on top of that. AMG has the Black Series, Porsche has RS, and BMW, they have the CSLs, or GTSs. BMW's M Division is known for making very fast versions of BMW's existing lineup, but a limited number of lucky buyers can get the ultimate versions of the ultimate driving machines. And for some reason, there's two of them, CSL and GTS. They're very similar on paper. They're both powerful rear-wheel drive sports coupes that are extremely rare. Now, GTS means Grand Touring Sports, and these are track cars first, road cars second, from my understanding. And then there is CSL, Coupe Sports Lightweight. Except now BMW press releases call it Competition Sports Lightweight, which doesn't mesh well with their design philosophy, but forget their marketing, they have the same issues with marketing as they do with design these days. CSLs are meant to be lightweight, faster versions of their road cars, still emphasizing road cars. But when the CSL badge debuted, the line between those two nameplates was a lot more blurred than it is now. By the time the early 1970s came around, BMW was finally back on their feet after World War II and doing well, and they saw their 2002 TII European touring cars getting their doors blown off by the likes of the Ford Capri and the Alfa Romeo GT-AM. Their response was to create a purpose-built touring car out of their E9 series coupe. So the recently created M Division teamed up with Alpine to build the first lightweight. And depending on where you were at what time, the CSL that you could buy was dramatically different than a CSL that someone else could buy. Out of the 1,265 3-liter CSLs that were built, 765 of them went to Europe, while the rest went to the UK. If you were in the UK, your lightweight wasn't as light as others, since the UK CSLs had plusher interiors, electronic windows, and no fancy bodywork that everybody knows and loves. And then, out of the 765 that were actually lightweights, only 167 of them were the legendary Batmobiles that were required to homologate the aerodynamic changes in 1973. These CSLs got the usual deletion of cabin luxuries, aluminum bodywork, thinner glass, and a 3.2-liter inline-six, making 206 horsepower and 211 torque. But it's still called a 3-liter CSL, even though it's 3.2-liter, because some things never change at BMW. And the road-going bodywork wasn't for show. It generated 90 kilograms of downforce on its way to 136 mile-an-hour top speed. Honestly, the 3.2-liter CSL is my favorite BMW ever made. The styling is legendary, the sound is beautiful, and it has some pretty interesting bits of history. While it wasn't very successful in FIA Group 5 sports car racing, it dominated the European Touring Car Championship with 6 drivers' titles. And the Group 5 versions were famous in a different way. They served as canvases for the first 2 art cars, painted by Alexander Calder and Frank Stella. And one last bit of trivia for the Group 5 cars, they also featured the first appearances of the blue, white, and red stripes that became the BMW M Division's trademark style. What buyers back in 1975 didn't realize is that would be BMW's last lightweight for over a decade until the E30 M3 came out. Now, the E30 is already a lightweight legend, coming in at just 2,800 pounds from the base model. But as the DTM world exploded into a fierce BMW-Mercedes rivalry, the base models were just the start. Remember, the E30 M3 was meant to counter the 190E, so then Mercedes made the 2.5-liter 190E, while BMW responded with the evolution of the M3. So then Mercedes countered with the 2.5-liter Evolution 2, and BMW countered with the Sports Evolution. Yes, that is a better name, far better name in fact, than the 190e 2.5 liter Evolution 2, but still, it would have to be fantastic in order to beat the Mercedes on the racetrack. And it was. In fact, it was the ultimate E30. The Sport had more power, up to 220, and it had adjustable front and rear aero with brake cooling ducts added just for good measure. The weight dropped to just 2,600 pounds, and it's the fastest and most desirable out of all the E30 M3s. It was also marked by a sudden departure when the E36 came out in 1992, as the E36 went from a track-focused race car to a sports car, a normal road car. I mean, the E36 had amenities like sound deadening and a comfy interior that was never seen on the M3 of old. At least until BMW wanted to go racing again. Because then Europe got the M3 GT for the FIA GT class. 356 M3s were given racing bodywork, stiffer suspension, aluminum doors, and chassis stiffening cross braces. Then the S50 inline 6 got a bigger camshaft and a higher compression ratio to make 300 horsepower. All of this was in an M3 that was 66 pounds lighter than the normal version. So the M3 GT is a solid, often underappreciated M3 that came in a brilliant green paint job. But I think it's underappreciated because BMW strangely gave the best E36 to America. The M3 Lightweight was a coupe, sporty, lightweight version of the M3, but it was not a CSL. Maybe it was too much like a GTS, but either way, the Lightweight stripped everything out of the M3. No radio, no AC, no sunroof, no sound insulation, nothing that was unnecessary for racing. The result was an M3 over 200 pounds lighter than before. The Lightweight got a fantastic looking decal set and a trunk kit just to separate it a little more than normal M3. Now the trunk kit came with a legal document that every owner signed that acknowledged that any installation of the parts in the kit voided the warranty because they were barely legal in the US. Inside was a Euro spec oil pump, a new front strut bar, a new lower cross brakes, and an even more aggressive aero kit than the GT. Specifically the wing, which got spacers to push it even higher into the clean air, while an adjustable front splitter was also included. I guess there's a pretty big trunk in the E36. Only 126 lightweights were built, and 115 of those were for production, so it's one of the rarest BMWs ever made, period. But you know what? Enough shenanigans, enough talking about lightweight cars that weren't CSLs or track cars that weren't GTSs. Let's talk about the real thing. In 2003, the M3 E46 got even better, with the CSL badge returning for the first time in 31 years. And BMW did not treat that badge like a simple slap on the back and we're done job. They went all out. Glass reinforced plastic was used to reduce chassis weight. The front seats were fiberglass. The glass was thinner. Then carbon fiber was added to the roof, front splitter, rear diffuser, airbox, and most of the interior. This allowed 243 pounds to be removed while still having optional air conditioning and an optional radio. That's a 10% drop in overall weight. But that was just a start. Larger 19-inch Michelin Pilot Sport Cup tires were installed, the steering rack was quicker, the brakes were bigger, the engine got 17 more horsepower, and a ducktail wing was added to the trunk. It did a sub 8-minute lap of the Nürburgring in 2003 with rear-wheel drive and a 360 horsepower naturally aspirated inline-6 engine. It may very well be the best M car ever built, and the only reason we're even having that discussion is because it was straddled with a 6-speed automatic transmission for reasons I don't fully understand. But you know what? It could have been even better. because BMW made a prototype CSL with the 424 horsepower V8 from that year's M5. Obviously, nothing came of it since we aren't talking about the greatest car BMW's ever built, but at least we got it in the spirit with the M3 GTR for America anyway. All 5 of those lucky buyers. Now that was the E46's shining moment, and it was time for the E92's shining moment in 2010 with the M3 GTS. And that was the car that made everybody ask, what's the difference between a CSL and a GTS? We already covered that at the beginning of the video, but it definitely blurred the lines a little bit, because it was very much like the 3-liter CSL in the huge wing, more power, less weight, etc, etc. But BMW says that since it's a road-legal, club sport-oriented model, it wasn't a CSL. Sure, whatever. While the 2003 CSL had rear seats and optional creature comforts, the GTS certainly lived up to that club sport element by having none of that malarkey. Even the rear seats were replaced with a chassis brace, and the front seats had racing harnesses. And that highlighted that the GTS meant serious business. The bored-out 4.4-liter V8 made 444 horsepower and 325 torque, which jumped the top speed to 190 miles an hour even with the added downforce. Then, the track widths were widened to fit even bigger tires, and all 135 sold came in an orange color that must be the antithesis of the word subtle. I love it to death. It's a bright orange track-ready V8 monster that you could probably see from space. And BMW seemed to like it too, because just 6 years later the M4 GTS came out. It followed a similar formula to the M3 GTS, only it came in a boring gray color. Though it did have nearly 500 horsepower thanks to water injection. That had a tank that took up all your trunk space, and that you had to refill every third time you stopped for gas. But it was still a stripped-out, full roll cage, carbon fiber track weapon that saves 60 pounds. So it's only 3,500 pounds. And it's the same price as the 911 GT3 RS, which is more powerful, lighter, and better handling. Only 700 M4 GTSs were made, and in my opinion, it's the first flop BMW made for this type of car. Realizing this, BMW reacted by dismissing the GTS entirely and building a new CSL. And let's get it out of the way, it's hideous, moving on. The M4 CSL now makes 543 horsepower, 70 more than the base model, and unlike the X-Drive base model, it's old school rear-wheel drive through and through to be a complete wheel-spinning hooligan. They also managed to trim 200 pounds out of the thing, but it's still 3,600 pounds, so calling it a lightweight is a little dubious. So you know what? Let's find out if it's worthy by doing some maths. Yep, you know it's serious when Excel shows up. The original 3-liter CSL shaved weight by 8% and increased power by 4%. The E46 CSL dropped weight by 10.6% and increased power by 6.6%. The M4 CSL, the most recent CSL that you can buy, increased power by 15%, but it only decreased the overall weight by 3%. The only variants that dropped the weight by less were the E30 Evo 3 and the E36 GT at 2.4 and 1.4 pounds lighter respectively. So yeah, even in percentage terms, the newest CSL doesn't really earn the L in that badge. Still, could be worse, because just a few months later, another CSL was launched, as in the M4 CSL debuted in May 2022, and the 3-liter CSL homage was unveiled in November, literally 6 months later. It took BMW 31 years to make 2 CSLs, and now there have been 2 more released in just 6 months. I will say this new CSL is significantly better than the M4 CSL. I mean, yeah, it has the same engine and chassis, but the bodywork is a massive improvement, an obvious throwback to the 3-liter. It's a much more stylized design for once in a good way at BMW. And it has a 553 horsepower inline-6, the most powerful one that BMW has ever built, and it's mounted to a proper 6-speed manual gearbox, the first manual CSL since the 3-liter in 1975. There's only one problem with this otherwise brilliant car. Only 50 will be built at $780,000 each. What the hell? It's the best M car of this era, but that price is ridiculous. I mean, let me put it in scale for you. You can buy a Cayman GT4 RS, a Rolls-Royce Cullinan, a C8 Z06, and an M5 CS with $16,000 to spare for that price. We give BMW a lot of crap for their styling department, but I really hope that this new CSL pattern doesn't infect other legendary BMWs, because honestly, the CSL badge is going downhill with these last two cars, both in terms of quality and frequency of release. And BMW just doesn't seem to care. And that is a bigger tragedy than anything that their styling department can come up with.